So today we're going to learn why going to the gym will not make you successful, why you should never buy Loro Piana, why investors never invest in winners, why cavemen died out, and last but not least, the 2,500-year-old philosophy that made me millions. It all starts with the first principle, which is being physically able. Now, this might sound predictable, but soon you'll find out why this is only half the truth. You see, every influencer ever has already told you the importance of going to the gym and getting fit. And they're not entirely wrong. Going to the gym will make you more money. It's been proven by science. In fact, scientists have discovered that there's actually a correlation between the amount of time that somebody spends exercising per week and the amount of money they make. Those who exercised regularly saw a 13.36% increase in their income. So they're right. All the influencers who told you to hit the gym were actually correct. You'll make an extra 13% if you do that. But is that really what you want? I'd hope not. I hope that if you're watching this video, well then you want to be able to forge reality to your own dreams and not just see a 13% increase in your income. Now, being physically able will help you get there, but not going to the gym 5 times a week and eating 1 gram of protein for every pound of body weight. Why? Because not all exercise is created equally. What do I mean by that? Well, exercise isn't just about the time, reps, or calories that you spend or burn at the gym. Following a repetitive program at the gym will not level up your brain. How so? Well, because in doing so, you just keep doing the same thing over and over again. Get this, in order to be able to bend reality at will, you'll need to rewire your brain. You need to rewire your brain to continuously do one thing, and that's learning. You always need to be learning. Your neuroplasticity, which is the ability of your brain to form new neural connections in learning, needs to be optimized at all times. So knowing that, do you really think that lifting the same weights up and down will help you achieve that? No. And again, you might ask, well, why not? Well, because it's too robotic. There's nothing new or novel about it. It's not challenging. You're simply not forming new neural connections. It might be challenging to your muscles, but it's not really challenging to your mind, to your cognitive ability. You're just standing there like a robot doing the same motion over and over again. Now, I'm not saying that it doesn't improve your health and fitness. It definitely does. And if your goal is just to get jacked, well then, sure. Be my guest. But again, if your goal is to become a person who can bend reality, then you simply need to do more than that. You can't just act like a factory worker and expect the world in return. It doesn't work like that. What are you gaining from those brainless gym sessions beyond bigger muscles? Not much. But so what's the alternative? Well, let's look at the science. According to a 9-year, over 80,000 person study, the British Journal of Sports Medicine came to one singular conclusion. There was one style of activity whose health and cognitive benefits far outweighed its counterparts. People who enjoyed this activity were 47% less likely to die of any cause and 56% less likely to die of cardiovascular disease. These people also had greater planning and decision-making skills. And isn't that exactly what you need to be able to forge reality to what you want? Yes, those 2 skills are perhaps the most important in becoming successful. So what is this magic activity that unlocks your ability to master these 2 skills? Racket sports. Sound surprising? Well, let me explain why it shouldn't be. Your brain is the most important part of your body, and like everything else, it needs training. Challenge yourself, learn something new, and work on your coordination. That way, your brain can actually create new neural pathways as you begin to master something new. The beautiful thing about a sport like tennis is that no 2 games will ever be the same. So your brain constantly needs to work, and so does your body. Essentially, the coordination between your body and your brain is firing on all cylinders at all times. And the same thing can be said for most other sports that involve difficult coordination, such as football, basketball, ice hockey, or ping pong, just to name a few. I could go on. Sports where your brain constantly, again, needs to be firing on all cylinders just to even keep up with the game. That's when your brain is growing. That's when you're truly training your brain, not just when you're doing the same repetitive task over and over. So don't be so static. Work on your coordination. The more challenging it feels, well, the better it is for your brain. Now, the next step is realizing that being physically able isn't just about your physical prowess and fitness, it's also about how you carry yourself. If you do it correctly, you can literally biochemically engineer your success. It's very simple. Stand up straight, have your shoulders back and your chest out. It's crazy how something as simple as having a good posture actually affects your neurochemistry. Amy Cuddy, who's a social psychologist at Harvard Business School, found that striking a power pose actually increases your testosterone and drops your cortisol after just 2 minutes. That's faster than any pharmaceutical drug, and all you need to do is, again, a power pose. Knowing that should give an entirely new meaning to the phrase, your exterior dictates your interior. Now, the next principle may also seem obvious, yet nobody knows how to do it right. Because principle 2 is being presentable. Now, people love to pretend that we live in a world where superficial things don't matter. Unfortunately, or fortunately, that simply is not true. And there's one fatal flaw that almost everyone falls prey to when it comes to being presentable. But we'll get to that in a bit. The reality of our world is that nobody likes a slob. And mind you, I'm not talking about your facial structure or other things that you can't change. I'm talking about super simple things that are entirely within our own control. For example, if you're walking around with a D-squared hat with icon written across it, it's not just that you're dressed unprofessionally. You'll actually just be seen as an unintelligent fool by any smart person. And it doesn't even matter if that's what you are, because they most likely won't give you a chance to prove them wrong. How do I know that? Because people do judge a book by its cover. D-squared and brands like it have become synonymous with daft people. Just think about the kind of people you see wearing it. And the types with Gucci tracksuits aren't any better either. Do you really want to be grouped in with those people? Of course not. But why is this so important? Well, a theme that you'll notice throughout this video is that in the last 5 to 15 years, there's been a trend. A lot of the truisms that we've always lived by have been proven by modern science. At the top of that list, you'll find the truism that first impressions last. Because they most definitely do. And even longer than people initially thought. Science has shown that first impressions can last for months, according to a study conducted in 2017. So no matter what happens after you're seen wearing a Gucci tracksuit or a D-squared hat, people will always perceive you as that kind of person. But beyond lasting a few months or more, first impressions have been shown to affect people's judgment even in the presence of contradictory evidence about the individual. In other words, it doesn't matter who you actually are or what you actually have to offer. If you make a bad first impression, it's pretty much game over. And so much of that is based on the clothes that you're wearing. So you quite simply need to learn how to dress well. And no, that doesn't necessarily require spending tons of money. So let's break it down. Rule number 1, avoid super skinny pants at all costs. And rule number 2, avoid following trends. Just buy classic, timeless items. An extreme example of this would be Steve Jobs, who wore the same black turtleneck, blue Levi's jeans and New Balance sneakers every single day. But for the rest of us, just applying the philosophy of choosing quality and comfort over logos and flashiness goes quite a long way. One of my favorite brands for affordable, high quality basics is Falconeri. And if you want to go even lower budget, COS actually has some pretty good basics too. And no, I'm not sponsored by these brands. In fact, I've never taken sponsorship money from anyone. I would not give you a biased review. I've just been happy with the items that I've bought there. But I mean, sure, if you're already making bank and you want absolutely crazy quality, well then you can treat yourself to some Loro Piana. But honestly, I'd highly advise against it. When I first discovered Loro Piana 6 to 7 years ago, before I could afford it, the items were expensive, sure, but they still made sense in comparison to the quality. Today, a pair of Loro Piana summer walks are like what, over $1,000? I bought my first 4 pairs when they were like $500 to $600, and even then I still got them at 50% off because I knew a friend who worked at the store. But spending $1,000 on a pair of loafers, which mind you have a rubber sole, not a leather sole, a rubber sole, that's just plain stupidity. It's like voluntarily asking to be scammed. It's becoming borderline embarrassing if you ask me. A jacket from there is like what, $3,000 to $5,000 plus, which is also ridiculous, but at least it'll last me 10 years. But even then, why? I almost always feel better and more comfortable in clothes that have a correct quality to price correlation, because I know that I've made a good purchase, and so wearing it and using it as it's meant to be just makes me feel better about myself. I don't feel like I've gotten scammed. I literally remember buying clothing items that were like 2,000 euros when I had less than 20,000 euros to my name. It's so stupid I can't even fathom it. That's 10% of what I had in my bank account on a clothing item with a logo on. So please don't make my mistake. The point is, all you need is some decent quality, unbranded clothes, and then you can stop worrying about it and spend your time and focus on something more worthwhile. Now, the craziest thing that I discovered when looking into first impressions was this. They tend to be pretty accurate. They're especially accurate in predicting 2 of the big 5 personality traits. 1, extroversion, and 2, conscientiousness. That means you can't just simply fake your way through first impressions. And so now, besides your clothes, as I mentioned before, there's one other fatal flaw that will kill every first impression. And the worst part is that it's actually so easy to change. This isn't rocket science, and I'm not asking you to change who you are at your core. I'm just saying that you need to do the bare minimum. So what's this fatal flaw that most people fall prey to? You might have heard it before, but it's your handshake. Let me give you some perspective. Imagine making a huge business deal with someone, shaking their hand and feeling zero conviction or confidence in it. It'll probably make you doubt the entire foundation of the deal. Now, you've probably heard that a handshake says everything you need to know about a man. But why? Does a handshake really matter that much? Honestly, I find the concept a little bit cringe to even talk about, but according to science, it actually does matter. A 2009 study in the Personality and Social Psychology Bulletin concluded that 2 key metrics to first impressions are clothing and posture, and a 2011 issue of Social Influence concluded that a limp handshake makes you seem overly passive. A handshake can even predict how neurotic someone is, and more so, a weak handshake just makes you as a whole seem weak, like a leaf simply floating through the air aimlessly. At least that's the association people will have with you. I know that I can never fully lean on someone with a loose or limp handshake. Just you can't have confidence in a person like that. They seem hesitant. I know there's something in them, some mental block that prevents them from having the confidence you need to be able to fully count on someone. There are those famous stories of people like Donald Trump who pull you in when you shake their hand. And no, you don't need something that drastic. In fact, I'd be pretty annoyed if somebody did that to me. That would be a bad first impression. And you definitely don't need to crush the other person's hand either. Don't be that annoying guy who tries to show his strength by gripping it as hard as you can. Just have a nice and affirmative, confident handshake, that's all. And so with that, we've covered principle 2. And so that leads us on to principle number 3, which is seeking failure and rejection. The idea that you need to seek failure and rejection to succeed is nothing new. It's a truism that's been around for decades. But only now have scientists begun to realize just how powerful the tool failure actually is. I recently read an article titled "Intelligent Failure is the Key to Success," but there's a catch. Notice that we're talking about intelligent failure, not useless, avoidable failure. Now, here's a harsh truth. Most people don't think, and much less think critically. And notice, I'm not saying people are dumb. Most people are not dumb, but they simply choose not to think because it's easier. So in a time where most people don't put much, if any, thought into their own actions, it's definitely easier for you to succeed if you do. The bar has quite literally never been lower. You just need to be the tiniest bit diligent and thoughtful. Let's analyze that a bit further. In business, as in life, failure is inevitable. Anything good in business is a synthesis of trial and error. It's a balancing act of testing and iterating, and trust me, you have the time and opportunity to keep trying. Why? Well, because in order to succeed, you need to go through a series of paradigm shifts. And the quicker you go through them, the quicker you succeed. So not having time for trial and error is BS, because the more trial and error you go through, the quicker you will succeed. You often look at these young, successful entrepreneurs and think, wow, they must be special. They must just have succeeded from the get-go. That's simply not true. You can't just skip ahead and bypass these paradigm shifts. But the earlier you start, the earlier you'll get through them. And so a lot of the successful young people you see, well, they just started a lot earlier than most people. So what are these paradigm shifts? Well, think of it as such. To get good at anything, you need to first allow yourself to be bad. Business is no different. Get this, there's a bunch of stories of Silicon Valley VCs who will never invest in founders who have not failed before. You heard that right. They will not invest in a founder who hasn't already failed with a startup. So what can we take from that? Well, 2 things. Failure allows you to gain knowledge and experience that you otherwise wouldn't have. It builds the resilience you need to be an entrepreneur. And that's why investors always say that they invest in founders, not ideas. Again, let's look at the science. The 2005 study Learning from Errors by Cannon and Edmondson, published in the Annual Review of Psychology, looked at how organizations can create a culture that encourages learning from failure. Their conclusion: error management and learning from errors is a key component of success. In 2006, Success Through Failure by Petrosky, a renowned historian, explored how failure actually leads to innovation in engineering and architecture. So, not only is failure integral to learning, it's also the catalyst that allows for innovation. And it makes sense. When you fail, you get an outcome that you didn't expect. And that's not always bad. Sometimes that randomness can actually lead to new and better ideas. In fact, it quite often does. And that's innovation. Preparation and planning meeting the random idiosyncrasies of life. And Petrosky showed this. There are hundreds of papers and scientists that have come to the same conclusion. It's true across the board. Organizations that allow for failure find greater success, and you can adapt that right into your own life. People who allow for failure succeed to a greater degree in their business careers. But all that failure also amounts to something else, which leads us to principle number 4, competence. Let's think backwards for a second. Let's consider what success means. Obviously, it means different things to different people, but to succeed in the marketplace, there is one hallmark quality that everybody needs to have. And it's competence. Today's world is quite literally built upon it. But today, virtually everyone has access to the tools required to become competent. And that definitely wasn't always the case. I mean, in caveman times, who was the most successful? Well, the person who was the most physically able, not the most intellectually competent. And needless to say, the same obviously goes for most species in the animal kingdom. But why? Well, because physical strength for animals usually produces the best odds for survival. But for us humans, that concept began to change with the invention of tools. Humans were never the largest predators, but we were the most competent. You can actually even see a change in our brain chemistry throughout this period of inventing tools. Our brains adapted from being more aggressive and brutish to being more social and pleasant. All because the definition of success changed away from just being about force to being more about competence and tool building. But even then, for the next couple thousand years, the tools required to become truly competent would be kept secret. Just think back to how the aristocracy worked. The aristocracy guarded their knowledge, i.e. their tools, with everything they had. They educated their children with private tutors, and they prevented regular people from having access to books. Hell, the Romans even built entire colosseums to distract people from the pursuit of competence. That's why they put on gladiator battles and stuffed people with wine and bread. It wasn't to keep them happy, it was to distract them from the fact that they didn't have access to the only thing that could lift them up in the world, which is knowledge and the competence that stems from it. So now let's be super tangible. What can you actually do that will make yourself more competent? The answer is simple. You need to advance these skills and tools that will help you, but you also need to be a well-rounded person. The key here is simply learning. And I promise you that if you spend the next 6 months truly learning every single day, you will be more competent than 95% of the people out there. 6 months is really all it takes. That's how low the competence bar is these days, regardless of your age. So these are the 3 things that I want you to do. 1. Read books. Read everything from self-development to business, fiction, philosophy, and history. Just don't limit yourself to any one genre. You need all of them. Don't become the person that just sticks to mental masturbation and doesn't get anything done. Only reading business and self-development books will not help you. History, even fiction and philosophy is just as important to becoming a well-rounded and competent person. And then remember that there's no point in reading if you don't act on the things that you read. You need both intake and output. Moving on to number 2, take courses, even the free ones. There are thousands of free courses out there. Sure, some of them are bad, but many are amazing. Some are taught by entrepreneurs like myself, and others are taught by experts teaching at universities. You'll be amazed by how much you can actually learn for free. This just wasn't possible 100 years ago. Now, this will help you develop the habit of constantly learning and becoming a better version of yourself. And again, please do not limit yourself to just business and money-making stuff. Sure, it's great if you want to get good at email marketing or copywriting, but if all you know is that, then what are you actually going to write about once you get clients, once you actually start writing the emails? You might be good at writing them, but if you have no background knowledge to help inspire them, well, then you're not a well-rounded person. You might be competent at copywriting, but you're not a competent person. You're not well-rounded. Base level of knowledge about a breadth of things will always serve you well. And number 3, seek free experience. Just learn and experience what the market is actually like. The most important thing you can do is just seek experience. Work for free. Understand the marketplace. Put all of your knowledge to real-world use, and I promise you that in doing so, you'll 10x that skill and knowledge that you've been cultivating or studying. Essentially, you just need to get your foot in the door. And in your first 6 months, just don't even worry about money. Just focus on stacking your experience and skills. Once you've done that, you'll be in a better position than 99% of people. Because as I said earlier in the video, it has never been easier to succeed. And if you think that you don't have anywhere to go get experience, I guarantee that you do. You know at least one person whose dad or friend or uncle could use an intern. And if you don't know someone, then someone you know knows someone. Whatever experience you get, it doesn't have to be glamorous. Just take what you've learned and apply it in the real world and see that experience unfold. Now let's say you're in the 1% who doesn't know anybody. Well then, get to know people. Send some cold DMs, offer up your work for free. And finally, we have principle 5, which is be stoic, not reactive. Now, this isn't new. This philosophy has been around for thousands of years, and for good reason. Most bad decisions in life come from a place of reaction, an emotional place. And that is as true in business as it is true in life. For example, let's say you try and start an online business, like an IPGA. For those who don't know, IPGA stands for Info Product Growth Agency. And in short, it's where you help other creators or experts grow their courses or other info products, and you get a percentage plus a flat fee for helping them. It's a great business model. I go as far as to say it's the best online business model out there right now. Anyway, when starting an IPGA, in the first 1, 2, 3, or even 4 weeks, you may not see any huge results. Who knows, maybe you don't close your first client. Now, a reactive person would get impatient in this case. They'd simply assume that, well, maybe the business model doesn't even work. And so they'll start changing things that don't need changing. Don't be that person. Be patient, be stoic, and trust that the tried and tested methods will work, provided you give them the time and resilience too. Take one of our students, Kieran, for example. He joined our IPGA masterclass at the beginning of the year, and the first couple of weeks he didn't see results and he was about to give up. He was even about to ask us for a refund. But he decided to be resilient and stick with the business model, and shortly after, we started seeing messages like this in the community. First client W, $1,300 a month retainer and 20% revenue share. Second client closed, 1.25k pounds upfront plus 20% revenue share. Third client closed, £500 a month and 40% revenue share. And then we got another one here. Are you effing mad? Second 5k upfront and 30% profit share deal done for the week. 14k month so far. And another one, little W from last night, and we see a screenshot of a $1,500 payment. And we got another one here, new client closed, $5,000 setup plus 30% revenue share. And finally, call me DJ Khaled, 5k upfront and 35% rev share. So again, this is one of 100 examples of incredibly successful students in our community that didn't exactly find it easy to begin with, but they stuck with it and eventually they saw amazing results. So just realize that nothing is as urgent as it seems. It's no accident that the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. The rich allow themselves to look at things from a macro perspective. They allow themselves to think long-term and remain level-headed, not be reactive or emotional about the small difficulties of life. It's all like one big game of chess. And in chess, you have to be calculated and unemotional. But if you're reactive, you may not see that you can gain a bishop by only sacrificing a pawn. So internalize these 3 hallmarks of Stoicism. 1. Maximize your impact and forget about the material world. 2. Focus only on what you can control and take ownership of everything. And 3. Adversity is simply an opportunity to become a better person. People have survived genocides by embodying those principles, so if you can embody them, well, then you're almost guaranteed success.